Welcome to the Deep Dive. We take stacks of information, distill them down, and give you the crucial insights. A shortcut, really.
Exactly.
And today, we're tackling a really powerful book, What Happened to You? It's by Dr. Bruce D. Perry and Oprah Winfrey.
A phenomenal pairing.
Right. Dr. Perry, a child psychiatrist, neuroscientist, and Oprah. It comes from, what, 30 years of their conversations?
Over 30 years, yeah. Blending the science, with these really human stories. It's quite something.
So who is this deep dive really for?
Honestly, it's for pretty much anyone. Maybe you've dealt with trauma yourself, maybe not. Maybe you just want to understand yourself a bit better.
Or other people.
Or other people, definitely. If you ever heard labels like people pleaser or self-sabotager.
Yeah, bad at relationship.
Exactly those. This is really about giving you a shortcut to understanding how our past experiences genuinely shape us. Right now. Today.
Okay, so our mission then is to sort of unpack that. How those earliest experiences wire our brains, affect our behavior, our connections with others.
Yeah.
We'll get into some, frankly, surprising stuff about how the brain handles stress, handles trauma, and crucially, how knowing what happened to you might just be the key to changing things.
It's about hope, fundamentally.
So where do we even start? What's the big idea they want us to grab onto first?
Well, the absolute core, the foundation, is this massive shift in perspective they propose.
Okay.
It's moving away from asking, what's wrong with you, which is so common.
So blame-focused, yeah.
Totally. And shifting to ask what happened to you. It sounds simple, but it changes everything. It's not just words. It's a whole different way of seeing behavior, seeing brain development. It's about understanding, not judging.
That immediately makes me think of Oprah's own story in the book. That incredibly powerful memory.
Her beating.
Yes, as a child for just, twirling her fingers in water. And she describes the blood on her Sunday dress.
It's just visceral.
And she points out, in the rural South back then, that was, she says, there wasn't anyone I knew who wasn't whopped. That kind of repeated early experience.
Yeah.
The book argues it shapes absolutely everything.
Precisely. That's the point. Your personal history, the people, the places, the events, it literally sculpts how your brain develops.
Wow.
Which leads to this amazing outcome. Every single brain is unique. We all see the world, understand it, react to it differently because of our specific history.
So it's not just damage, it's uniqueness.
Exactly. And that's where the hope comes in. Our brains are miraculous, they're adaptable, they can change.
Okay, so the past isn't just, over. It's actively coded into our brains. Let's unpack that brain architecture piece. The book talks about this hierarchy, right? Brainstem up to cortex.
Yeah, it's layered. Think of it like building a house from the foundation up.
Okay.
So all the information coming in sight, sound, touch, smell, it all hits the lower parts first. The brainstem, the midbrain, these are the more primitive reactive parts.
Nothing goes straight to the thinking part.
Nope, not directly. It gets processed down low first, and here's the key. It gets instantly matched against everything you've experienced before. All your stored memories and associations.
Like a filing system.
A very fast, very automatic filing system. Take the story of Mike Roseman, the Korean war vet.
Right, the motorcycle backfire.
Exactly. For him, that sound wasn't just a loud noise. His brainstem, which the book explains, doesn't really understand time.
Doesn't know the war's over.
It doesn't. It just registers gunfire. Threat, and boom, full threat response activated. He felt like he was back in Korea, under attack. Even pushed his wife away, his body was back there.
That's incredible. And that's the state-dependent functioning idea, right? Yeah. That the stress response actually shuts down the higher parts of the brain, the parts that can tell time.
Precisely.
Yeah.
All brain function is state-dependent. When you're calm, relaxed, regulated, you're using your cortex, your smart brain. You can think, reflect, plan, create. But as you move up that arousal scale from calm to alert to alarm, fear, and finally terror, the control shifts downwards. The higher cortical systems become less dominant, less accessible.
So the reactive parts take over.
The reactive, survival-focused lower parts take over. That's why I say a kid with a trauma background might suddenly swear at a teacher for an unexpected touch.
Even if they know it's wrong.
Intellectually, yes. But in that moment, their state has shifted. Their cortex is essentially offline because the lower brain screamed, threat, and the survival response took charge. They can't reason it through right then.
Wow. And the book really hammers home that the earlier these experiences happen, the bigger the impact. Because the brain is just growing so incredibly fast then.
Absolutely exponential growth in early childhood.
And that's what forms this personal code book, or worldview, as they call it.
Exactly. It's like the operating system being written in real time based on input. Think about children who grow up with abusive fathers. Their brains, understandably, start to wire connections. Men equals threat, anger, fear. It's an unconscious protective association.
Right.
But that codebook entry then influences how they perceive all men later on. Even a kind male teacher or eventually a healthy partner, the initial filter is already in place
It's automatic.
completely. The brain is constantly categorizing sensory input, making connections, building these complex webs of memory that define how we see and react to the world.
And it's crucial to remember it's not just about, big trauma, like obvious abuse. The book makes that clear.
Absolutely not. Living in constant chaos, even just witnessing violence against a parent.
Or feeling like a burden, like Oprah described feeling when she was passed around after her grandmother died.
Exactly. That feeling of instability, of not being securely attached, that also creates these deep early associations about safety, worth, and connection. It all gets written into the code book.
Okay, so we have fight or flight, which most people know about, but the book talks about another response too, dissociation.
Yes, another incredibly important adaptive response, especially when you can't fight or flee.
Like a baby or a small child.
Precisely. If you're too small, too helpless, what can you do? The brain has another strategy. It prepares for the worst, for injury. Heart rate can actually go down. Natural painkillers, opioids get released.
Wow.
And psychologically, you disengage. You disconnect from what's happening outside. You sort of flee inwards. It's a mental escape when a physical one isn't possible. Very common for young children facing overwhelming situations.
So you kind of disappear inside yourself.
Yeah.
And like fight or flight, this could become a go-to response. It gets sensitized.
It absolutely can. It becomes a default pathway under stress.
The book brings up Russell Brand's addiction here. His quote, "Reality is my problem. Drugs and alcohol are my solution." Is that connected to this? Using substances to achieve a kind of dissociation or regulation.
Very much so. It connects back to finding ways to soothe, to regulate. Children will find ways.
Oh, yeah.
For someone like Russell, who talks about feeling deeply lonely, alienated as a kid, substances might offer a kind of quiet, a temporary escape from internal distress that feels intensely rewarding.
The pleasure of distress relief, as the book puts it.
Exactly. And that pull is incredibly powerful, especially if those fundamental needs for connection and safety aren't being met and there aren't other healthy ways to find that relief or reward. It all loops back to dysregulation. Trauma survivors often have a different baseline stress level, making them more vulnerable to addiction as a way to cope, to regulate.
So with all this understanding of dysregulation and trauma's impact, what does the book point to for finding balance, for healing?
Well, one fundamental element is rhythm.
Rhythm.
Rhythm. Think about how instinctively we rock a crying baby.
Right, it calms them down.
It does. It provides pattern, predictable, repetitive sensory input. It helps them regulate their own internal state. And interestingly, it helps regulate us too.
Huh. Never thought of that.
We all have regulating rhythms: walking, swimming, listening to music, chanting, dancing.
Things that are predictable.
Consistent, predictable sensory input. It connects deep down to safety and balance. This starts literally in the womb, the mother's heartbeat, around 60, 80 beats per minute. That's perhaps our earliest, most powerful association with safety and regulation.
That's fascinating. So healthy regulation isn't just psychological, it's deeply biological, wired in from the start.
Absolutely.
And this connects to resilience, right? The book argues we aren't just born resilient.
Correct. That's a key takeaway. Kids aren't born resilient. They're born malleable, shaped by experience.
So resilience isn't fixed.
Not at all. Our ability to cope with stress, with distress, even with trauma, it's changeable. It's something that can be built or, unfortunately, eroded.
How do we build it then?
Through experiences.
Yeah.
Predictable, moderate, controllable challenges actually strengthen our core regulatory networks, the brain's basic stress management systems.
Like sports or learning something new.
Exactly. Sports, education, mastering a skill. These involve manageable stress that builds capacity. But, and this is crucial, it has to be the right level of challenge, the Goldilocks level.
Not too much, not too little.
Right. Too much stress, especially for a child whose stress system is already sensitized from earlier trauma, can backfire. It can overwhelm them and damage their self-esteem instead of building resilience.
Okay, shifting gears a bit. The book talks about society. It makes this really striking claim that we're becoming relationally impoverished. What does that mean?
It means we're living in ways where we just interact with fewer people. And even when we are around others, we're often not fully present, we're distracted, not truly listening or connecting.
Phones, screens.
Partly, yes, but also just the structure of modern life sometimes. And this lack of deep connection, this disconnection, it's making us more vulnerable.
How so?
Well, the book argues, and research supports this, that our current mental health is best predicted by our current relational
Oh,
health.
connection to others.
Our real, felt sense of connection to family, friends, community, culture. And we're seeing these worrying increases in anxiety, depression, suicide.
And loneliness is a big factor.
A huge factor. Disconnection and loneliness are driving forces behind much of this distress.
And this lack of connection, or maybe distorted connection, it feeds into implicit bias, too. The book links this back to that early brain stuff.
It does. Remember how the brain categorizes things based on early experience? Familiar equals safe, unfamiliar equals potential threat.
Right.
Well, deep down unconsciously, our brains create these memories of our people, their smells, sounds, looks, skin color, things associated with our earliest caregivers and community. That becomes a template for safe and familiar.
So anything different can trigger a slight alert.
A slight, often unconscious, stress response. It's a default setting. The book tells that story about the blonde Peace Corps worker in Africa.
Where the kids thought she was a ghost.
Exactly, because she was so unlike anyone they'd ever seen. Her differentness initially registered as threat, or at least dangerously unfamiliar, but over time, her consistent kindness and positive interactions allowed their brains to recategorize her, to associate whiteness with safety and care in that context.
It shows those categories aren't totally fixed, but the first ones are powerful.
The first experiences lay down the initial filters, and then you layer on top of that things like distorted media.
Yeah, that statistic was shocking. Crimes with a black suspect and white victim are only 10% of crimes, but get 42% of the TV news coverage.
Think about the impact of that relentless distortion on how brains organize information. It powerfully reinforces negative associations and contributes directly to implicit bias, especially racial bias.
And this plays out in real life, especially under stress.
Critically, think about that example. An inexperienced white police officer may be already a bit anxious, confronting a black teenager, maybe late at night. The officer's lower, faster brain might be dominating.
The survival brain.
Right. And if that brain holds an implicit catalog associating black men with threat, fed by media and maybe lack of positive exposure.
They're more likely to react out of fear, escalate.
Exactly. More likely to perceive threat where none exists or to overreact. Fear-based behavior takes over.
So even if someone consciously believes racism is wrong.
Their intellectual cortex believes that, but the implicit bias lives lower down, in the faster, more automatic parts of the brain, and under pressure, that lower brain response can win out.
So what's the fix? The book talks about cultural sensitivity training.
Which is important. It helps the intellectual understanding, the cortex, but it's not enough on its own.
Needs real experience.
It needs to be paired with actual positive real-world experiences and relationships with diverse people that helps retrain the lower brain's associations. The long game, though, is about minimizing the development of these biases in the first place, raising kids with more exposure to all kinds of human diversity earlier on, and, critically, changing the systems in policing, housing, education that are inherently biased and keep perpetuating these problems.
Wow. Okay. We've covered a lot of the challenges, the impact of trauma, but the book is ultimately hopeful. What does it say is the most powerful route to healing?
Connection. Hands down. Relational connection. The book states that the most powerful, rewarding experience for the human brain is positive human interaction.
More powerful than substances?
I do.
Or other coping mechanisms?
Ultimately, yes. Without genuine connection, people who care about you, spend real time with you, listen, support you. It's incredibly difficult, almost impossible, to move away from those unhealthy patterns of seeking reward or regulation. Connectedness is the antidote. It counters addiction. It soothes the stress response. It's the key.
And the stories in the book really bring this to life, like Tilly's grandmother, Gloria.
Right. Instead of shaming her about sugary candy, Mama P focused on connection, love, and then gently introduced healthier options. It was relationally based.
And Joseph, the little boy who saw his mother murdered. How Dr. Perry connected with him. Not through long, intense therapy sessions.
No, through what he calls therapeutic dosing. Short bursts of interaction, minimizing the power imbalance, being playful, patterned, repetitive, ways to gently engage Joseph's cortex without overwhelming him.
Brief, powerful moments.
Brief, fully present, powerful moments, that's often how healing happens in these titrated doses, and ideally within a community.
Healing in community.
We heal better together. Creating that network of support allows for those safe, moderate, controllable opportunities to revisit difficult experiences, process them, and gradually build a more regulated, less reactive way of being.
That sounds like what they call post-traumatic wisdom, taking those incredibly hard experiences and finding strength in them.
Exactly. Turning pain into purpose. The book gives incredible examples. Chuck us saying more.
Finding redemption after prison through his son's letter, becoming an advocate.
Yes. Or Anthony Ray Hinton surviving decades on death row by using his imagination, by dissociating constructively almost.
And then using books to help others heal.
It's about accepting the past, not condoning it, but accepting it happened and choosing how to move forward. Oprah talks about forgiving her mother, releasing that burden of shame and guilt to allow healing.
That takes immense courage.
It does. And that wisdom, that journey, it doesn't just apply to individuals. The book really pushes us to think about it societally, too. How can we heal collectively, move towards a better future, if we don't acknowledge and process our shared historical traumas?
That's a huge question.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so let's try to wrap this up. We've taken this deep dive into what happened to you. We've looked at how profoundly early experiences shape our brains, our stress responses.
Our capacity for connection, for regulation, and for healing.
And that central, crucial shift from asking what's wrong with you to really understanding what happened to you.
And realizing just how malleable our brains are. Trauma leaves marks, yes, deep ones sometimes, but resilience isn't fixed. It can be built.
Especially through those consistent, predictable, positive relationships. Connection is key.
It really is the buffer against adversity. Can't emphasize that enough.
It's all linked, isn't it? Our physical health, emotional state, social issues like bias. It's not just in your head.
No, there are deep biological roots grounded in neuroscience, which also means there are biological pathways towards feeling better, towards healing.
But there's also that challenge the book raises about our modern lives, this relational poverty.
Yeah, the disconnection, fueled by tech sometimes, by pace of life, contributing to anxiety, depression, loneliness. We need more real presence, better techno-hygiene, as you said earlier.
Right. Intentional connection. So as we leave this deep dive, here's something to chew on. If our basic understanding of the world, our working model, is fundamentally shaped by what happened to us early on. How might taking the time, really taking the time, to understand what happened to ourselves, and just as importantly to others, be the most powerful step we can take towards a future that's maybe more compassionate, more connected, and ultimately more healed for everyone?